Welcome, everyone. We're here with Arry Yu, a longtime Startup Haven member and blockchain guru. I'm excited to have her here. This is a member brief, and so for those of you who are new to member briefs, with about 2,000 founders and a few hundred investors as part of Startup Haven, someone in Startup Haven knows most things about most things in the startup world. And so member briefs are our opportunity to tap them on the shoulder and have them share their insights with the rest of the Startup Haven membership. So today we're going to talk about the state of DeFi and blockchain and so forth. And Arry, we've known each other for quite a long time now, and it's been a joy to watch your trajectory. When we met, you hadn't ever done a tech startup.
Yeah, it's a while ago.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. But then fast forward, you built a great product and you went through a couple of great accelerators, a local accelerator at the time, and then 500 startups as well, and have always just been one of my favorite operators. You are an animal when it comes to operations, and I've learned a lot from you. For those first coffee meetings we had where I was trying to share what I knew about startups to help you on your journey. And now look at us now, and we're at least peers. I look up to you in a lot of ways for your operational prowess. So thank you for all that you've done to contribute to Startup Haven over especially these last few years. By the way, everyone, in addition to being a founder and investor herself, she's also Arry's also a venture partner in the Startup Haven fund.
Yay!
And has just been a super value add. So thank you so much for all that, Arry. Now I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and say the things that are most important for you that you want people to know about Ms. Yu.
I think I can just talk about the present and you can kind of get the gist. But I do love building teams and I love building products and I love anything that's new and edgy. So hence I'm here in the world of blockchain, crypto, Web3, DeFi, whatever you want to call it. Currently, I'm the chair of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, so that represents tech, blockchain, crypto, Web3 companies from Portland, Oregon, all the way up to Vancouver, BC, and all the states in between. So obviously, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And then newly formed as of last year in June of 2021. This is 2022, right? Yeah. Created the US Blockchain Coalition. Story on that is, I called up Lee Bratcher, who's the president of the Texas Blockchain Council, and I said, hey, just want to trade some notes. Like, what's going on in Texas versus Washington, and why are you guys moving so quickly? Is it because you're governor? Is it because you're a red state versus us being a very blue state? What do you think is in the air between, comparing us to? And so we started trading notes, and then we said, hey, we should bring in other states and start chatting. And so we brought in 10 other states a few days later. And then literally a week later, we had 30 states on the call. And believe it or not, June 2021 was the first time states got together and started trading notes on everything in the space: policy, regulators, relationships, community, fundraising, everything. And so ever since June of 2021, we've been talking every month regularly.
So that sounds like a that can't be true thing. Really, like the states haven't ever coordinated on this stuff.
Not the stuff. I mean, there are different interstate organizations and associations, but they're not specifically focused on crypto, blockchain, Web3, whatever you want to call it, and talking about the concerns between the states. Just focus on this particular topic. There's nothing until now. So that's what I've been focused on. And we've gone from that 30-ish states to about 42 states right now. It's a lot of cat herding, as you can imagine. Some states are really, really excited about Bitcoin mining. And so states like, Texas and Ohio and Virginia and North Carolina, off they are going down the races. Other states are just trying to figure out how to involve more, unmainstream, what's the word? Non-mainstream folks like in Arizona, they're trying to bring in the Native Americans and figure out how this technology can benefit, the tribal nations there. And so it really depends on what state you're talking about. But it's been really, really very interesting just because, here in Washington State, never having traveled to like Kansas, for instance, or Kentucky, or, more of the middle states, we typically just assume that they're red and, they don't really know anything. And then you start talking to folks and you're like, no, they're actually really nice. And there's a lot that we have in common, more in common than we don't, despite, what is portrayed in media and what we assume based on what we hear through the political, back channel, and our affiliations, our presumed or assumed affiliations. And so, I think the big lesson that I'd like to share is that you just need to get in real life, in real time, and talk to people. It doesn't matter if they're green, black, big, old, young. There's actually a lot more that we have in common than we don't. And when we start with that, there's a lot more that we can do together. And if this space wants regulatory clarity and uniformity in the United States, that's where we have to start. We have to start by talking to each other, putting aside, are you red, are you purple, do you watch Fox News, or do you listen to NPR? Forget that nonsense and just talk to people. And then, on the side, I also, as you said, I do investing, and also mom to 3 little boys, age 0, 3, and 6. And so, my life is, they are my lives now in so many ways, in addition to the work that I do in the world of air quote, universal blockchain.
Right. Well, and you also do some educational stuff too, right? Not just the regulatory stuff, but
yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Regulatory stuff is a lot of education. You're just basically on rewind, repeat. And so, I launched a course with Coding Jojo back in 2019-20, and then that went really well. But it was a full time, like I don't know if you remember, but it was like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, for many months at a time, working Saudi Arabian hours. The Saudis, imported in teachers to teach emerging technologies to their workforce, and so I was part of that team, focused on blockchain, of course. Just was brutal on the physical health of myself and my family.
I'm not sure if you ever actually fell asleep during one of our calls, but you needed to sleep during some of our calls. So
yeah, it was just insane. And so stopped that and decided to pair that 12-week full-time course and make it into a 3-week course. And so started my own set of courses through the Maven platform, and then thought the 3-week course was still too much, and so eventually pared it down to an 8-hour 1-day course. So I've been doing that monthly, and then Portland State University asked me to come in and be an adjunct professor. So we've started the semester, and I'm teaching a course there, which is really nice, in addition to the monthly thing that we do. And and then everything that we do in this space is really education and having a conversation.
Yeah, good. Well, that's encouraging to hear that all these disparate states are getting together and just trying to figure it out. Kind of a silly question, but I just wonder, do you think what you've seen now, where you see this sort of blind collaboration, nobody cares who you are, where you're from, what you do, but it's like, let's figure this problem out together. Do you think blockchain, if there's any elements of blockchain, Web3, whatever you want to call it, that can do that for the broader citizenry of any place on Earth? I mean, is there anything inherent in blockchain, the technologies, and not just the sort of libertarian, like utter privacy, like those things that are shared by a lot of people, but do you see these other elements? Like, is there anything that brings blockchain, that blockchain does to bring just people generally together?
I think the topic brings people together. And so if you come into this community, I mean, it's a really, really open community. It doesn't matter if you're female or trans or you're 90 years old. It's really a just open community. I think that's what this community and this technology has done, is bring people together. I think what people mistakenly assume is that, I can do a DAO. Arry, you should do a DAO. That's the way you can make this work and scale it. Oh, or we should use blockchain or distributed ledger technology. And what people get wrong is use blockchain to amplify a network effect already in place. You don't create it using blockchain or tokens or crypto. And that's why most of these startups that you see trying to apply tokenomics and block, you're way too early. You don't even have like a million monthly active users, let alone like, what are you doing, right? So I think a lot of people get that wrong. I think if you're going to apply this technology to bring communities together, people together, you have to build the community first and have the processes already in place. And then maybe you might want to apply the idea of a DAO or blockchain. But until then, I think you're putting the cart before the horse.
So that's a great insight. Startups listening, take heed. Do you think that message is coming through? Did the downturn in NFTs wake anybody up to that notion? Because there were people even before things went haywire were saying, no, you have a community, everybody shares a collection, but like there's no real value in that. It's not real, right? People were saying that before what you're saying now was discovered, right? So is that a message you see now? People go, oh, what's NFT 2.0? Is that really going to be more of the same, or is it people are going to heed that advice?
People didn't heed that advice in 2017. They're not going to heed that advice today, because it's like the wild, wild west. So like if there's a chance, hopium is not a very good strategy, as you know, but there is hope that people will be able to make $2,000 a day or $200,000 a day. And there are stories of people that have done really, really well financially, but it's off the backs of someone or lots of people that haven't, right? Like nothing is for free. And so, when you see people making out like bandits, it's because they've literally made out like bandits. There are hundreds of other people that just haven't. It's not everyone can be winners in this space.
Yeah.
So no.
Looking at the startups, that I've been talking to recently, and some of them are doing exactly what you described, and I haven't really had the language to challenge them on that. I do see that they're trying to. It feels like they are trying to use blockchain as an advantage that they wouldn't otherwise have to build a thing that doesn't exist yet. But I'm going to take what you said, and I'm going to proselytize that a bit now, because I think you've captured it. Because what they should try to do, build real value first, and then use blockchain. And if you can have blockchain as part of it, but that's not going to be the thing. Don't rely on that.
No, absolutely not. And so it's hard to build a startup from scratch, as you know, and it's hard to grow it. It's really, really hard. Why are you going to further complicate it by adding blockchain or crypto on top of it? When you do that, you have not just your startup that you have to grow from scratch and figure out how to monetize and build a real business model on. You're doing the same thing with the crypto. The crypto becomes a product number 2. And so when you do a startup like that, you need the CEO or CPO to run the startup, and then you need another like CEO, CPO to run the token and figure out the tokenomics and manage the community and a whole army of folks. It becomes you're dividing and conquering, which you don't want to do in startup. You want to have all hands on deck, focus on one direction, and that doesn't happen when you have tokens involved.
Interesting. Thank you for that. So let's talk about.
But then also you want to ask, like, do you really need blockchain? Like, is the technology really answering a big pain point, or can you not just use like some sort of distributed ledger technology? Can you just use some sort of like a different database? Once you get your scale and you have your community and your network effect, then maybe you might want to think about it then. But the technology and the protocols will be very, very different, and maybe we'll be in a totally different ball game. And then the same thing with crypto. Do you really need to create your own special Bob token? Probably not. Can you just use Ether or some other token that's out there? I'm sure there are 13,000 other cryptos to choose from. Like, why are you going out and creating your own token? Why do you want to become the central bank? Because that job sucks,
That's good. Well, I think about the startups that I've seen that I think are meaningfully, their trajectory is meaningful. They're actually making progress. They got a product. They're actually solving a problem. And in one case, the the token seemed essential at the start. And then a really smart team realized that actually we can wait on that, right? We can do the other things that we need to do. And they're absolutely right? And it sort of opened up the floodgates in a way. Like now that they're not burdened by that, they can build a business model that actually builds a good business. And then the token will serve its purpose if it needs to in the future. And
if
then
you need to create one, yeah,
that's right. So any case, well, that's great insight. Thank you for that.
But the reasons founders will want to do it is because it does allow you to basically become the central bank and create money out of thin air. It's really great for investors and advisors, because they get to get involved early on, and then they get to make money. But everyone, when you're starting with tokens with no network effect in place, you're making money off retailers. You're making money off mom and pop and Bob and Jane, teachers, people in Nigeria. Like it's not a good game to be in. It's not a good foundational story that you want to your company. The ethos is going to be contradicting why you're starting a company versus like, why are you in tokens right now? It's because there's so much money to be made off other people.
Yeah. So do you have a litmus test, or do you have something you can share about your radar so that, is there a sniff test for, wait, these founders, it's a shell game. It's purely what you just described. They want to be bandits. They want to, have a token. They want to make a bunch of money. They really don't care about the problem they're solving, the future of the company, what the investors actually get out of it. They see an opportunity to go snag some moolah, and that's why they're in it. Is there any advice you have for investors to be on the lookout for?
A simple one is like 99.9999% are in that game. You're becoming the central bank and you're printing money out of thin air, and there's a lot of monetary benefit for everyone and anyone involved, and you kind of have to lie to yourself, and then you believe the lies. I mean, having done it myself, you believe the lies in that you're solving this big world problem and this is going to be a big thing, and no one actually ever believes that they're bad guys. Even bad guys that are hunted down by the FBI don't even really think they're bad guys. So most entrepreneurs that play this game are never going to think they are the bad guy either.
Yeah, beware. Okay. Well, so all of your insights now, you've been for several years now, you've been leveraging that to help move the regulatory landscape forward in a direction. Talk a little bit about why that's important. What kinds of things have to happen in the regulatory environment, and what impact those kinds of things will have on the future of blockchain and crypto.
I mean, I have sort of a conspiracy theory take on that in what I believe. I mean, I can give you like the vanilla answer, and then I can give you what I believe. Like the vanilla answer is regulatory wise, we need clarity and definitions. We need guidelines. We need to make the US a very competitive place compared to other places in the world for this type of technology, for innovators, for investors, blah, 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 right? And, there's still questions on, is this SEC territory? Is this CFTC territory? Blah, 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 blah. How is this going to be taxed? And those are all things that impact all of us and are important. But on the other side, I think this really is a game of dollar supremacy, because the US dollar is the most exported product from the United States when you think about it, right? What is the most exported product out of the United States? US dollar.
Yeah.
And then the US dollar as the global world reserve currency has had its run of 88 years or 100 plus years, depending on when you start your marker. But it's been around for quite some time. And if you look at all the past currencies, world reserve currencies, they die after about 100-ish years. And so, people are going, right? And then there's these inflation rates and all these issues that are going on with our money right now. But I don't think the US will, and I don't think it will actually happen where the US dollar will no longer be the world reserve currency. I think it'll continue to be for at least the next 30 to 50 years, right? So that's my opinion and my assumption. I don't know if everyone agrees with me or wants that. I think probably most of us in the United States will want that because we've benefited greatly from that. But then we need the United States to make a decision on, to CBDC or not to CBDC, right? Are they going to do the digital dollar, and what is that going to look like? Is it a retail product or is it a wholesale product? How does it work with banks? How is this going to work with all the different payment rails and systems in the world? That decision needs to be made. And until that decision is made, we're not going to get regulatory clarity.
Gotcha. And what's the implication
So
of not having regulatory clarity?
we have states kind of fighting amongst each other, and that's what we've had until now. We're becoming better and better with the U.S. blockchain coalition. It's been like Wyoming and then Miami and Texas and California and New York. These are the spiky hot spots that we have in the United States. But we're working on changing that. I think the opportunity is, while the federal area, they're deciding on what they're going to do with our lives, the states have a real opportunity to incubate ideas, right? There's this quote by Justice Brandeis, which is, the states are the best laboratories for democracy. Okay, well, instead of all of us, literally the entire Web3 blockchain crypto industry is putting all of their money in DC right now, in Blockchain Association, in the Digital Chamber of Commerce, in the Crypto Council of Innovation, all these different, they're all focused on Washington, DC, and I think that's the wrong place to be focused on. I think we should be focused at the states. And every state has their own different constitution, and every state has their own community. And I think if we focus on hyper-local communities and helping real people and real entrepreneurs with real world problems, instead of just fighting the fight in DC, I think we can really come up with some good policies that make sense. And not every policy may work for every state, but when we do find this policy that does work for 4 or 5 states, we can be like, hey, it's working. And here's how we've tried it out, and here are the different varieties. Let's propose, a nice version of this for DC, and show that it's worked in Missouri, and it's worked in Kansas, and it's worked in California, and it's worked in Washington and Virginia to boot. I think that's a totally different story.
So that's an interesting vision. Is it supported by anyone in DC? Does anyone think that that's a good idea also, besides
yes.
An old dead judge?
Yes. So the U.S. Blockchain Coalition is actually made up of 42 states. We see ourselves as the convener.
Well, but wait a minute. Well, let me stop you.
I'm not done.
Okay. Go ahead.
And it's made up of 42 states. So, we're focused on the hyper-local relationships, but we're also bringing to the table those that are focused at the federal and international levels. So we're working with associations like the Blockchain Association, right? We're working with associations like the Global Business Blockchain Council, which, works with Fortune 500s and is very internationally focused. We're working with a whole host of different, agencies and associations that work across multiple states and also at the federal level. In addition to the WTI, I think that's one thing that most of these other types of organizations have not done, is partner with the technology industry. Like, why are we pretending that blockchain and crypto is not a technology? Why are we trying to pretend like this is it's a whole new thing? Yes, it's a new thing, but it's a new technology, and we should be working with the technology industry. And the technology industry has been around for, say, 60, 70 years as an industry, right? And it's only in the past 20, actually more like 5, 10 years, that the technology industry has actually started to mature in hiring government affairs people and policy managers in their respective companies, right? And blockchain, crypto, Web3, whatever you think about it, these companies are even newer, and they're now hiring that one government affairs person to be government affairs for all the states and across all the world. They're starting to get it, but I think we should partner with technology industry, leverage the relationships of the big giants like Microsoft, like Expedia, Amazon, Oracle, Facebook, and kind of work together in helping shape and influence policymakers state by state and also at the federal level.
So that is a lot of rowing, right, to get there, because each of those states has to get their own legislatures to agree to adopt things, and then and that's at the state level, and then the senators or representatives have to then go to Washington and get something done there, and getting the coordination, critical mass of enough states just doing things at the state level that are all sort of kind of similar, and then to get them also to inspire their national leaders to go to DC. We should do something about this. That
Hmm.
feels like a decade plus project. Am I wrong?
I think it could be. I mean, depending on what happens, there's a lot of variables and dependencies on what happens next. But at the state level, I think there is a playbook that we can optimize. When you take in the playbook that I built with the Cascadia Blockchain Council, we started with Washington and we grew to be Cascadia. And actually, then California pinged me and said, "Hey, I want to join you, and let's make it the West Coast Blockchain Council," right? So that's how the whole story started. And then you look at Texas and Florida and all the different states that are actually doing really well. There is a playbook on what makes a blockchain council association move really quickly in building out the communities and all the fingers into policymakers at the state level. So we have that going state by state, and we're sharing that playbook with each of these different leaders. And then building those relationships, there are organizations like the WTI and TechNet that have technology associations at every state level, right? And so we're connecting each of these blockchain associations with their technology counterpart in their particular state. And they have relationships with the policymakers and counties and mayors and legislative folks and senators and representatives. And so we're building out that network that way, right? Um, and then, when you look at across the level, there's things that we need to do all together. And instead of each one of us coming up with our own economic impact of digital asset study, we're doing that together. And so that's something that I'm doing on behalf of all the states. Like, I'm doing a study that's the impact of digital assets, economic impact of digital assets across all the states. So we're doing that study, and that's something that each state can use individually with the data that we provide for that particular state. It's also, gives them a picture of the, how they fit in for a particular region or across the United States. We're doing like a use case showcase and a catalog. A lot of policymakers are saying, "Hey, I'd like to see what are the use cases for this technology outside of Bitcoin." Well, there's tons. Let me show you. Well, we don't have a catalog. No one's done that cataloging exercise. And I think the global business blockchain council did it once, but it's a few years old. And so, putting that together so that, Idaho can be like, "Oh, I really like what Virginia did," or, Pennsylvania can look and I like what Connecticut's doing or Rhode Island's doing. And so we have points of contacts and, use cases for each of the different stories that we want to bring to front of mind for people.
Yeah, so that's you've made the case that what you're doing, what all the states are doing together, will be a catalyst, right? It'll make things more effective, more efficient. Things will move faster than they would if they didn't cooperate that way, right? And collaborate. But it's a long-term project, and startups are involved in, relatively speaking, very short-term projects, right? An aircraft carrier turns very slowly. If you're going to land a plane over there in the water and you're expecting the aircraft carrier to be there to catch you, if you're expecting it to move quickly, you're going to be in trouble, right? So this regulatory space won't move fast enough for most startups to get the clarity.
Maybe.
Maybe in some states, and maybe there'll be enough ambiguity that the feds will not intervene, right, or not cause trouble. But if you're working on innovation, and by the way, and I won't hold you to this because I know you were speaking loosely, but if the states are trying to solve for their own regulatory needs for their own states, and if it's true that 99.9% of the folks who are doing innovation are bandits, right? That's a really hard environment, right? Because the true innovation for the true use cases that are really going to add value to people's lives and to at a state level, whatever that looks like for those use cases. If so much of it is just bandits trying to, score a win for a quick buck, then what does that say about the startups that will be trying to do actual real things? There are real founders trying to do real things, solve real problems, and blockchain, Web3, et cetera, is important for them to do those things. How can a startup respond to this lack of clarity, right? They're going to do things that might get them in trouble because there's no clarity. At a minimum, it might kill the company. What's your advice to startups that are trying to navigate in this space? Just like, no, stay home, don't do that startup until there's clarity, or full speed ahead and damn the torpedoes?
I mean, I've been the operator in this gray space before. And so, if I were working for you as a startup, I'd say be really, really diligent about who you choose as your advisors, investors, employees, service providers, lawyers, accountants. Be extremely diligent and don't cut corners on any of that. Hire and work partner very, very slowly. I'd say focus very much on operations. And so a startup in this space must operate much more professionally and much more maturely than a typical startup. Like you can't cut corners. You want to do employment agreements, make sure the employment agreements are good. You know, you want to do a C corporation, make sure you get good C corporation corporate documents. Do all of it very, very diligently. I'd say if you decide you're going to go the token route because your heart is set on it and you think this is the way to go about doing it, fine, great, go do it. But then you better be really, really diligent about documenting your narrative around that. Because you want to be able to say, I mean, the SEC or whatever government agency can come back, years back and be like, you got to return the millions of dollars or whatever, right? Or you have to pay millions of dollars in fine. Then I would say, startup, you better be documenting your narrative, why you're deciding and what you're deciding, and have that narrative be just, your operations or CEO person for a startup is writing that narrative in a journal, perhaps, right? And then if they decide to tokenize, then the developer that's writing the smart contract in the comments area in their code is writing like, this is why we're trying to do this, and this is the intent of it, right? So that it's very like detail oriented in all of the documentation and the execution of why you're doing this and how you're staying more on the light side of gray, if there's any sort of dark grayness at all in your intent and how you're working with the community and what you're selling, if you're selling a token and why it exists and how it works. All of it needs to be extremely well documented.
So just a link to the white paper is not enough.
No,
Yeah.
link to it's in everything, your execution, your blog, everything. Yeah.
So that's brilliant. Actually, now I'm thinking, as I look at startups and I'm talking to them about investing, as an investor yourself, do you ask to see the smart contracts? And are you looking for this sort of transparent, audit trail of the way the company's been thinking? And like, what if you meet a company and God, good found, like, I get it, good use case. They're not married to a token, but token might be useful, but they haven't followed that game plan that you're describing. Is that a red flag? Like, is that a no-go?
It really depends on like the time horizon I'm dealing with. I mean, as if I'm playing the investor hat, I'm investing for a certain time period, and so it depends. The question is if it depends. If it's a long-term play and I'm planning on holding this particular relationship with this company that also is tokenizing, then that's a different conversation than I'm investing, but my time horizon is like a year. I'm not going to be thinking so thoughtfully.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, let's talk about a little bit then. So, there's different kinds of startups, right? And there are startups that are, it's a token and it's ridiculous, frankly. And then there's startups that have tokens, but it serves a real utility in the product that they're building. And then there's this sort of industrial or enterprise class, quote, startups that do all the stuff that you and I are actually both invested in a company that we think, I won't speak for you, but they are and have done everything right, because they're in the institutional space, right? Knock on wood. And, but that amount of that attention to detail and that rigor is hard to do for two gals in a garage, right? But at that enterprise class, what do you see as the lessons? I love what you just said, but I'm also trying to think, like, when I meet younger companies, are there other things that I could point them at to say, see how companies like this are doing that? It doesn't have to be specific examples, but other lessons that early startups that are small don't have the resources, don't have enough team. I love the journaling idea. That's really, really good idea because anybody can do that. That's free, right? But Are there other things that you can recommend? And you said service providers are important, advisors are important, all the people that you work with are important. And that alone is a trove. But are there other things that you would counsel smaller startups to learn from these larger, more industrial grade companies in the space?
I think the biggest focus, I mean, because you don't want to boil the ocean, it's really focusing on the power of words, both written and spoken, especially if you're in the space. So I would just keep it there, like making sure that they're very diligent about what they're writing in text messages to each other. What are you writing to each other in Slack? What are you writing, not just in your code and your journaling, but everything needs to be consistent from day one as much as possible.
That's good discipline. Okay, good. Well, so for the broader, now let's shift gears away from the regulatory stuff. Super interesting, super important. But let's talk about some of the sort of current events in crypto and blockchain. And one of the big things that's happened recently is the merge. So share a little bit for those who don't know what the merge was, what prompted it, and what does it mean now that it's happened?
At a very high level, Ethereum is a acceptedly known blockchain, public blockchain that a lot of people are excited about or have been excited about, most particularly because it's seen as a platform to build applications upon. And so there's been a lot of innovations that's happened on the Ethereum blockchain. But it came with a lot of challenges because I think if you launch any sort of new protocol or base layer technology, and you suddenly have millions of people banging on it and tons of transactions going through it, it's going to come across some issues. And so that's what Ethereum faced. Back in 2017, it got clogged up. Gas fees were really, really high. It became just unaffordable to be able to send transactions on it, let alone like run applications on it. And so the scalability question became really top of mind for a lot of folks. And so a lot of new blockchains were created and launched since then, like the Solanas of the world, which say they can do many more transactions a second than Ethereum, etc. So Ethereum had that problem. It was also proof of work. And, now the proof of work is a question that a lot of folks personally and nonsensically are concerned about. And so they wanted to take care of that. Proof of stake became really cool and a lot of folks were really interested in it because it became like passive income for a lot of people or a lot of companies too. I think at one point, my prior company, we were staking a bunch of crypto and we were making another $12,000 a month in passive income just from staking. And so, it can be really, really meaningful, whether you're a company or a human being. And then, if you read the original white paper by Vitalik Buterin, he wanted it to be, open and universal and modular. And, he has very like idealistic views that he wanted to be this thing called Ethereum. And so, he always had planned for, Ethereum 2.0. And so that was the merge. The merge was enabling and bringing to life this next version of Ethereum, which was going to be proof of stake and is going to be faster and more scalable and all the things. But at the end of the day, merge is brand new. It's created a new Ethereum product. It's Ethereum version 3, right? Ethereum 2 that we knew from 2016 was, post the DAO hack, right? Where it was reversed and, bye-bye Ethereum Classic, here came Ethereum. And now, with the merge, now we have Ethereum basically 3.0. It's a brand new product. They did a major pivot, right? Like any startup does a major pivot, it's new. There's a lot of new things. There's a lot of new processes and operations and code and blah, blah, blah. So I think we just have to see what happens. I cannot see the future. I hope it goes well and continues to go well.
Well, so for all the other, would you say 13,000? I used to like pay attention to how many there were back when it was probably around 800. I was like, that's ridiculous, right? But if the number is somewhere around 13,000 or so, that's a lot of currencies, a lot of coins, a lot of tokens. But
Yeah.
how many of those are interesting, viable, useful, productive in your view? How many real coins, real currencies are there?
It depends on your definition of real and currency. I'd
Yeah,
say
so
there are
give us a definition of real and currency.
thousands of currencies. There are thousands of currencies,
Mhm.
but are there ones that I actually want to keep and collect and use?
Mhm.
Not that many. I do believe in like the stable coins. I do believe in Bitcoin. I do believe maybe a few other types of modes will be continue on over the next 2, 5, 10, 20 years, but I think a lot of them will die. Um, if you like the idea of tokens, because I collect Nordstrom bucks and I collect Starbucks stars and all these different points. So if you look at currencies and tokens as a new version of that, then there can continue to be thousands and thousands. Like why not, right?
Okay.
Um, and
So,
then
so I just learned
yeah.
something
So
about you. Um,
what
do you truly collect Starbucks cards?
I do, I love Starbucks.
I've been collecting Starbucks cards from the very beginning.
Oh
So
yeah. Do
we'll have
you
to
have a gold
compare
card?
collections today. What's that?
Gold card? Do you have a gold card?
I do.
Gold
I
card
actually had the
too.
black card too. Was the
Oh,
black
you have a
card
black
first or
card.
second?
I
I
don't
can't
know.
remember. In any case, well,
Yes.
that'll be a fun lunch. We'll have lunch. We'll bring your favorite cards and we'll share cards. Um,
Yeah.
well, yeah. So for again, just thinking about startup founders and investors. So part of as I've shared with you before, we're working on. I want Startup Haven members, both founders and investors, to be the most educated group of founders and investors about blockchain technologies on planet Earth. I think it's really important that you understand this technology, whether you want to use it or not, whether you want to invest in it or not. Uh, in the years ahead, opportunities will be created, and if you're a founder and a blockchain, a token, actually you have an operating business, it's actually working, things are going well, and there's an opportunity for you to add even more value for your customers by
Mhm.
implementing a token. Like you should know at least at a high level how that works and how to judge whether or not you might want to consider that for your company. And if you're an investor and you're seeing all these startups, all these bandits pitching junk to you, like I want them to be better equipped to say, you know what? Actually, Arry told me that you're doing this thing that I ought to stay away from. But also being able to sort out what the good opportunities are. And so I think it's important. So we'll be doing some stuff with blockchain in over the next year or two, just to give people more exposure to that, to learn about it, right? And so when you think about uh, the the future over the next, and not the not Bitcoin at 200,000 or a million or whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
but thinking out just a few years, the use cases, the opportunities, the pitfalls, like, are there some things that you would share with founders and investors to just equip them a little bit more to understand what might be coming and what to be on the lookout for, both good and bad potentially, but whatever you want to share.
Um, I think eventually we're gonna have clarity on definitions. We don't have definitions yet, so I hopefully in the next few years we'll have clarity on that. Definition that I'd like to exist and continue on in the future is the idea that blockchain is a very, very specialized, unique use case. And blockchains are public, they are decentralized, they are permissionless, they are global, they are immutable, all the things that you think of the when you think of the ideal definition of blockchain. And then if you wanted to learn about this and be a savvy entrepreneur or investor, then you start with the original blockchain, the OG one, Bitcoin. So go down the rabbit hole and learn about it and make sure you understand basic economics. yes, we've all learned Keynesian economics, but understand Austrian economics and the Chicago School of Capitalism, and understand these different schools of thought, because, if you're going to tokenize, you need to understand how to be a proper central bank, right? And if you want to play tokenomics, then you need to understand how to be a proper central bank and understand these basics. If you want to use blockchain too, I mean, you're putting a whole economic institution into this protocol, right? So that's another reason why you understand the basics of economics and monetary and fiscal policies before you, in addition to understanding the technology, blockchain. And then I'd say, if you're not going to be public, if you're not going to be permissionless, immutable, global, all the things that are in that definition of blockchain, then you're dealing with distributed ledger technologies. There are plenty of use cases for that, supply chains and government and titles and, maybe NFTs and stuff like that. But you're dealing with a distributed ledger technology, and that's great. You're dealing with a private blockchain, that's great. And so, being able to just have a mental model of how to navigate what's going on and what are you looking at. And even if you're looking at a startup with a token in it, like, be able to navigate, all right, they are the central bank. Do they need to be the central bank? Probably not. But okay, they're playing central bank. How are they going to monetize this? And are they going to use this? And how are they going to grow their company while managing two different, basically, companies under the same umbrella? And, do they have the operations and the savviness and the quick, pivot head to be able to navigate left and right, up and down, what it takes to survive in that? And the one company that we did, I started a payment. I think we did, when we met them, I was like, yeah, he can do the swivel head, and he'll be able to figure out, because it takes a crazy person to be able to do this really well. And so it's just I think, yeah, you're, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to parse out what is blockchain, what is protocol versus the economics, and going back and forth between that, and then being able to build community and your network effect and build an actual business around it, and
So
not
what I
just
love,
have it be hype.
so what I love the most about that is that actually sounds like work. That sounds, maybe it's not hard. Like, anybody who went down the rabbit hole and paid attention and really studied, they could figure it out. It's not, arcane knowledge that you need a spell book or something to understand.
Right.
But it's hard. It's serious. It's not, it's not just, oh, I know how to write a smart contract. Let me go do a blockchain company, right? Or let me be a central bank, because I know how to create a smart contract and I have this really cool thing in mind, right? It's
right.
Yeah, there's some work that has to get done to do that right. So I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to continuing to leverage all your beautiful knowledge of blockchain and crypto as we work on our project to educate founders and investors more. Is there anything else you want to share about, and this could be personal or all business, anything else you want to share about the space that you've learned, how it's impacted you, and what you're looking forward to or what you're fearing in the space?
I guess one of the thoughts is that comes to mind is think about incentives. When you're dealing with anybody or talking to anybody, whether it be an investor, advisor, employee, customer, think about incentives. Are they incented to do what I want them to do? And am I incented to do what I'm supposed to be doing? And what are the incentives that play here, at the micro level or at the macro level? And then secondly, I think if you're going to be playing in the space, then you want to be thinking and paying very close attention to the idea of identity. I think that's the bottleneck in this whole entire picture of how this works. People talk about a metaverse and Web3 and supply chain, just DLTs and nothing really is going to work until we figure out how does digital identity work, and how do we have proper language around that, because I don't think even the world hasn't even agreed on what is the definition of identity versus digital identity, and et cetera, et cetera. So identity is a huge piece, I think, that most people are not paying attention to. And most of these Web3, blockchain, crypto, native companies, they're all just kind of using the authentication methods that already exist today. They're using what is the Microsoft one? Auth. I don't remember. I don't know. You're using Google logins and Facebook logins, and I mean, that we don't really know how to deal with identity, and so we're just throwing the kitchen sink at it right now. But that problem needs to be solved, and we're still a long ways from that. I think that's the big kicker, and then protocols and which blockchain does what transaction faster and blah. I don't think that those are details that really don't matter at the end of the day right now, because we already have the technology that's solved that sort of seeing perceived challenges. Those are not problems that we need to worry about right now. The thing that we need to worry about right now are definitions, the idea of how are we going to deal with like digital identity. How do I know? How do you know that you're talking to me? How do you know? I mean, you've met me in person before, and you've known me for many years. But anybody else, like, how do they know they're talking to Arry Yu? How do I know that I didn't just send in my sister? Do I even have a sister? I mean, how do you know, right? And then especially if you're doing a lot of Zoom meetings, how do I know when I meet somebody for the first time over Zoom that person really is that person? And they really have the credentials they do. And I can look at their LinkedIn, but anybody can put in anything in LinkedIn. How do I know? And I can connect it to any sort of company I want. How do I know? Like, we haven't figured any of this sort of stuff out quite yet. And so until that sort of stuff is in a better place, all of this is in theory. And maybe the theory is going to be...
Go ahead.
Huh? Oh, I said maybe the theory will, come to life in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years. Maybe things will happen faster as technology does, but there's a lot of things that we need to figure out. And if you see like how slow humans move, and when it comes to definitions and regulations and standards, no, we should focus on human relationships right now and building our communities.
I like that. Well, I'm at TechCrunch this week. And so I'm going to run across the street and find a blockchain company that's figuring out the identity problem.
Yeah, identity, and that's a really hard one.
Yeah. All right. Good. Gosh, thank you so much, Arry. You've taught me so much, and I value all the contributions you've made to me personally, and for the fund, and for the Startup Haven membership. Thank you so much for spending some time. This was tremendous.
You're welcome. Thanks for the opportunity, and let me know if there's anything I can help with, or if I've misspoken anything. I'm here to learn too.
Well, so I'll hope to see you at a poker table soon. I haven't seen you in a while, and we'll catch up then. Bring some okay. Starbucks cards to the next poker game.
Okay, I'll bring my gold card.
Okay, cool. All right, take care.
Bye.
Okay, so we're out. So we'll cut it off here in post. So that was really super, girl. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Identity is really hard, though. It's so hard. I still can't wrap my head around it. And then the other thing that we need to figure out is how to have our new internet. We need to build a new internet. To have this Web3 world, you can't build it on the current internet that exists today, right? It has to be like IPFS or IPFS-like, I think, for it to really work in Web3 definition style. So,
and is that for the decentralization and what's the other? The decentralization and identity, and those things are going to be so important that Web2 just can't handle it.
It's not built for it. We need true Web3, new Internet 3. I don't know, like, and I think IPFS is that, or something like IPFS. And right now only IPFS exists. There used to be like another one called Skynet, but they died recently. They didn't make it.
In principle, would that have been the kind of a product that could have solved those problems?
Yeah. Those are the kind of products that we should be encouraging entrepreneurs to build, but that's really difficult, and it takes a really technically savvy group of folks to build. So I'd say, like, I mean, Protocol Labs has the IPFS. CNET had Skynet, but they didn't make it. So I'd be looking for another IPFS Skynet type of company, and then another company that is coming up with a new novel approach. Like, okay, they have phase A on how they're going to solve identity, but what do they think will happen in phase 2, 3, and 4, and what are their plans on figuring out what those next steps are? Because there aren't very many companies that are thinking like that right now.
Okay. Well, that's given me a lot to think about. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yep.
We got a whole hour in roughly, so that'll be great. I'm really grateful. Thank you, girl.
All
Hope
right.
the
Good
family's
seeing you,
good.
Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have fun at TechCrunch. Make a
Yeah.
lot of good connections.
So far, so good. It's been good. I'm having fun.
Awesome.
All right. We'll see you. Bye bye.
Okay. Bye bye.